friends, I'm back. I've got some knitting to talk about. I've got a little dog who's very excited to start doing that very soon. Leave it. No. No. So the first 5 minutes of video and audio that I have is just Conan barking and me staring at him and trying to get him to stop barking. Have you calmed down now? Can we talk about knitting now? So we've been to the vet since I last talked to you a number of times. So since I last posted a video, we've been to the vet even more times than we already have so far. Hello. Oh, please don't. No bum on my phone. But yeah, so we've been to the vet even more. Including the emergency vet for the first time. They were very nice. He's okay now, knock on wood. I feel like I got too confident and started telling people that he was all better. But anyway, many vet appointments later, I am back. I've been knitting, which has been exciting. I did not have the knitting the one day, or should I say night/early morning, when I was waiting at the emergency vet for 3 hours. But I started up another knitting project after that moment. So I showed you my crazy opal advent calendar blanket a little while ago. It was on my list of things to finish off this year. And I wove in the last 15 to 20 ends. So it's so colorful. Shush. It's so colorful. I love it. I had this second opal advent calendar. It's almost as big as a dog. I had that guy. And I wanted to somehow put them together. And I think in the last video I posted, I was trying to decide whether I was just going to knit another 4x6 blanket and seam the two together beside each other, or if I was going to do a border, because 24 is actually just the right number to do a border around this blanket. And I decided to go with the border. So when I made this blanket, I used the squares, I used the yarn in the order it came in the advent calendar. I started, there's so much of it. Way down here is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., all the way up to 24. And I decided that with the new blanket, I'm not going to be able to keep the pattern going exactly all the way around the way I want to, just because of the way mitered squares go together. But I thought, to start, I wanted the first ones, to be close to each other. So, for the first part of this border, I can't knit it attached to the blanket, because you can't, unless they start going in a different direction, but I wanted all the miters to go the same way. You can't attach mitered squares to the bottom of each other, just you can attach them to the top. So I started knitting a strip that will be the bottom border of the new blanket. And I've got 4 so far. This is where it started. This crazy colored rainbowy one. And then we have blue and red, reddish orange. And then we have multicolor and more multicolor. I actually feel like these 4, or I could wear it as a sash. There we go. I actually feel like these 4 are very similar in tone and sort of just all the crazy bright colors together, especially these 2. I mean, I know they're different, but it's the same sort of rainbowy craziness. And you can see all the ends. Because I've chosen to make these squares 2 colors, there's 4 ends for each square. And if there's 24 squares, that means there's 96 ends to weave in, which is why the ends on the full blanket lasted until years later. So anyway, back to my Miss Knitting sash. So, I've been working on this for Conan. When there's dogs barking outside, I can't stop them. Anyway, what? Dog barking. Sort of blanks my brain out sometimes. Anyway, so I wanted the squares to be the same as the new squares to be the same as the old squares. So I took notes when I was making this, because I looked at a couple mitered square patterns and then I really just sort of did my own thing. But I looked at the patterns to figure out what exactly I needed to do and how they went together. And so I had the notes that I wrote down and left over there. But these original OG blanket squares, 2016 squares, were 96 stitches. So when you do a mitered square, you cast on this length, like that right angle, and then knit, decreasing until you get to no stitches. So this long cast on number was 96, and I was using a 3.5mm needle, and I had all those notes in my Ravelry project. So I thought, great, I will get out my 3.5mm needle and cast on 96 stitches and just go. And so I did that with this guy, and I found, we'll talk about that in a second, I found the yarn I wanted to use for my little calendar corners, my little unifying element. And I knit a square, and I was like, yeah, yay, square. Let's compare it to the blanket. And that first square I knit was about an inch larger than the blanket squares on all sides. So that wasn't good. Well, I guess not on all sides. It was an inch larger on two sides. I lined up these corners, and then it was an inch higher up here and an inch wider over here. And I was like, that's weird. Because I had a pattern. I knew my needle size, I knew my cast on stitches, but I guess my gauge has just changed over the years. Because that was the end of 2016, beginning of 2017 when I was making it. And now it's mid-2019. He was quiet all morning. And then I get the camera out, and we haven't gone 2 minutes without barking. But yeah, so the first square I knitted was huge. And then, so I ripped it all out, cast on 10 less stitches, knit that square. So then I got almost to the end of that one when I realized that I had 2 more stitches on one side of this decrease line than the other. So I ripped that out. Third time was a charm. I cast on, see, the original one was 96. So I cast on 86 stitches because there was a lot of excess. So yeah, 5 less stitches on each side of the marker that goes at the corner. Did that. That worked. That seemed to be, when I compared it to the original blanket, it was slightly smaller, but I know because this is superwash yarn, superwash doesn't do anything but get bigger when you get it wet. So I knew once I blocked it, it should be about the right size, although I did not block it at that point, which was maybe not a smart idea, but oh well. So then I moved on. I got a little bit scared of how much smaller it was though with the 86 stitches. So the rest of these, because I wasn't going to knit this a 4th time, the rest of these are 88 stitch blocks, and I think I like that. I just fudged in an extra stitch when I was picking up here, and yeah. So now I've got my little stripe of 4. I actually need, for this to be the border, I want to make this, I just had a thought. I was going to make this 6 wide and then sew it to the blanket. Like, so there's, this one's hanging off one end and the next one's hanging off the other end, or the 6th one is hanging off the other end, and then go from there. But I suppose I could do 4 across the bottom and then 8 up the side, and then there's one little flappy flap hanging off the top. Interesting. I think I want to do the 6 though. I was thinking about how that all fits together. Yeah, I think I'm going to do 6 across the bottom. Yeah, because it would be 6 across the bottom, and then 6 up, and then the full 6 across the top, across the 2 new and the 4 olds. Yeah, we're going to do that. So I still have 2 more squares to add to this strip. So on the original blanket, I knew it was going to be crazy, and I wanted to add a solid color as like a unifying element. So I did that little thing that ended up looking like a calendar, which was kind of cool, in the corners of all the squares. And I wanted to do the same thing here, and I wanted to do it without having to buy anything. Because I have a stash. Don't we all have a stash of yarn? And so I had a look through. I could have sworn I had a darker gray that would have really complemented the sort of, it's not quite white. This is like the pale grays. Could have sworn I had a gray. Could not find, also thought I had a black. Could not find either of those. I really kind of wanted a solid color. And I wanted it to be the same throughout these 24 squares that I'm adding on. I found a lot of like navy blue and darkish blue, royal blue, solid colors, sock weight yarn, but I didn't want to add another color. And so I eventually settled on this one, which is unique sheep yarn. I was in their Lord of the Rings sock club years and years and years ago. And I never made any of those socks because they all ended up being really complicated, kind of like, I don't want to say crazy socks, but this came with another skein of yarn dyed in the same colorway. You're supposed to hold the two together. So then you ended up with really chunky socks, and then there was like colorwork socks. So I never used any of those yarns. This pale gray was actually from the colorwork pair of socks from that club. So this color is a slightly darker gray, and it's not quite solid. There are blips of darker gray, and there's blips of sort of yellowish, I guess it's sort of a grello-y color all over. And I wasn't sure about it. I mean, it does look kind of grubby, kind of dirty against the original, the white one. But I like it. It differentiates them. I think it's probably more interesting than having a black in there, although the black and the white would have gone well together. But I am also happy to be using stash yarn. Yeah, so I've got these 4, and you can see all the ends. On the big blanket, I did start weaving those in after I had a couple rows of squares done, just because I knew it was going to be such a horrendous job. And then next, so I'm going along this way, starting from here, going here, and now that as I need to make 6 squares, square number 5 is actually a gray, so I think that'll be a nice contrast to all these crazy colors that we had in the first, so far in the first row. And how about just for fun, just because I like doing this, here's my giant yarn book. So that was number 5. Let's find door number 6. Where are you? Door number 6. Santa's list. Oh, interesting. See, this is the thing with promising myself to do them in the order that they come. It's another grayish black. So, this is color number 5. This is color number 6. Awkward. But I want to go in number order. Do you want it? Come here, noisy. Okay. I have a dog on my lap and a blanket, and it's suddenly spring, so I'm very warm now. But yeah, so this first bottom row is 4 bam 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 bright colors, and then pale gray and white, and then black and white. We shall see. So once I finish the strip of 6, I'm going to sew that to the blanket by sewing the middle 4 squares of that strip to the 4 squares of the bottom of my current blanket. So there'll be a little flappy flap square number 1 and square number 6 will be hanging off each edge. And then from square number 6, I can I? Yes. That is the side where I can attach the squares fully. So if you imagine, I should have drawn this out. So if you imagine, I'm going to do this as I see it, because flipping that around in my brain is just not going to work. So I've got my strip of 6. I knitted from here, this one, to that one, and then there's the blanket. It's got the little one sticking out, and the rest of the blanket up there, and then I can pick up to knit the next 6 squares. I pick up half my stitches from the row on the blanket, and then half my stitches from the new square below. So that will be nice. So I'll have sewn on the bottom one, and then I can attach the left side. To go along the top, you can't do mitered squares, again, because I want them all facing the same way. I'm going to have to knit a strip of 6 for across the top. Am I? Now I'm confusing myself. What is going to happen across the top? I remember how I planned this out now. So I do 6 and 6, so that's 1 through 12. And then here's where my numbers are going to lose their continuity, that's 12. So square number 13, I'm just going to cast that on, not attached to anything. Knit that square. And then square number 14, pick up the stitches down the side of square 13, new 13, and then for the bottom stitches of square 14, I will be picking up the top of the top right square in the current blanket. And then those will be fully attached all the way along. So it's going to go 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through, 18? Yeah, 13 through 18. And then 19 through 24, I'm not sure. I think I'll just have to knit that as a strip and sew it in. But if I want to have 24 abutting against number 1, I think at that point I'm going to have to pull the last 6 colors out, or just, I guess, knit them in reverse order. Knit color number 24 first, and go upwards. This is how my brain works. But yeah, it's nice to be knitting again. It's portable for 2 more squares, which will actually be fun. Over the winter, I was wearing all sorts of knitted scarves to work, and one day a coworker complimented me on one of them, the first point of Libra shawl that's all like yellow and blue and green. And I told her I knit it, and it turns out she knits occasionally. She had currently lost an old work in progress that she wanted to finish, and we said we should knit sometime. We should try and start a knitting group at work in the lunch hour. And so this Monday is our first knitting lunch date. So that's the blanket. Oh, I remember. Once I finished this strip of 4, I was concerned about its size compared to the rest of the blanket, because I laid out the blanket and then I put this strip at the bottom just to see how I was doing gauge-wise. And I took a photo of that last night. So you can see that the new strip is slightly less wide. It's not quite as wide as the actual blanket that I'm going to be matching it to. And I wasn't too worried about it when I was just looking at the squares, and they were only a tiny bit smaller than the original squares, because I thought, oh well, blocking, it'll just get bigger. It's superwash. It won't do anything except get bigger. But then I saw all 4 of them, and I thought, oh no, what if I have to rip them out? What if they don't get big enough? So last night, I took this strip of 4, and I dunked it in some water, let it soak a bit, squeezed the water out, and then laid it out on top of the blanket to make sure I could get it to the right size. And it was so much bigger. I really didn't have to worry. Actually, my original first square, that was a lot. No, that was too big. But yeah, I did not have to worry about this not growing enough to match the blanket. I think it'll be okay, because I think I can sort of ease things in as I sew this strip on. And then I think I'll finish knitting the whole rest of the thing, and I won't do any more blocking until it's all done. Then I block everything together when it's all sewn together, and I think that will even out any weirdness. I hope that will even out any weirdness. But yeah, it's amazing what a good blocking does, because this was about an inch shorter than the rest of the blanket before blocking, and then after blocking I could have made it like 6 inches longer than the blanket. But yeah, that's been my knitting for the past little while. The same square a number of times until I could finally move on to the next squares. And then hopefully the next time I see you, I'll be going up one side of the blanket, hopefully. But yeah, I hope you have a great week until Conan and I see you next. Hopefully he won't be quite so noisy next time. And happy knitting!